So we're going to be looking at the post-millennium, which is the fulfillment of the Feast of Tabernacles. A lot of people say, well, what are you talking about? But the festival calendar is actually a prophecy of the fulfillment of the plan of salvation. And we've been looking at prophecy, direct prophecy, but now we're going to be looking at the fulfillment of the Feast of Tabernacles, which is actually the culmination of the whole plan of salvation, coming down right to the very last great day. The last great day is the most wonderful day in the whole plan of salvation. It all comes down to that last great day of which we're going to be looking at. Also the Jubilee. People are looking at, we're going to get into this a little bit later, but the Jubilee, many people are thinking, has to be fulfilled when Yeshua returns. Technically, that's not true. It may be, but technically it may not have to happen that way. But the Jubilee will be for sure fulfilled at the end of the millennium. And we're going to look briefly at that. But that's when the Jubilee meets its fulfillment. We're also going to be looking at the new month. Some people say that we'll call it the new moon, the new month. However you want to look at that, we're not going to get into any kind of a debate. But what we're going to be looking at the beginning of the month in the kingdom, the fulfillment of that promise will happen. We're going to be looking at some texts that show us the fulfillment of that, which is going to be, all this is going to be good news. So the whole festival calendar was not only a sequence of parties. I like to call them parties because I quite enjoy them. I used to party in a different manner a long time ago, but I love the way I party now. It's completely different, and it's just the way God wants us to party, to celebrate His goodness and His good news. So these celebrations, these annual celebrations that we have through the year, weekly celebrations, daily celebrations, they're all celebrations of the goodness of God, the righteousness of God, and His plan for us. Are you with me? Okay, great. So this is what we're going to be looking at primarily today. We're going to look Leviticus 23, 34 to 35 tells us, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of this 7th month shall be a feast, the Feast of Tabernacles, for 7 days to Jehovah." So here we see is the Feast of Tabernacles. It was a 7-day feast, and a lot of people think that that's got nothing to do with anything anymore. It's gone and been nailed to the cross. Well, a little extra homework. We've got some videos on that. If anyone wants to study on that, we've got lots of information. The feasts and the faithful, the rest of the story that they don't tell you at some churches, that's the name of it. I added some churches. But the feasts and the faithful, the rest of the story, that's a video series we have that you can watch, shows very clearly that these things were not nailed to the cross. In fact, not even a difficult study, a very surface studies will tell us that these things did not meet their fulfillment at the cross. So therefore their purpose, the purpose that God had in them, did not come to fruition at the cross. So it had a repeat down the road. There's lessons in these that we're still learning even to this day. And that's why we're celebrating them today. We always learn something else that God has for us in these things. On the first day there shall be a holy convocation. You shall do no customary work on it. Okay, goes on to say, for 7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire to Jehovah. On the 8th day, the last great day, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall offer an offering made by fire to Jehovah. It is a sacred or a holy or set apart assembly, and you shall do no customary work on it. So we have the first day is called a Sabbath. The last day, the last great day, is called a Sabbath, and it's called the last great day. Many people don't understand just the very name of the day should speak to us. The last great day. So if the feasts are to do with the plan of salvation, and we have one day within the whole festal calendar that's called the last, the what? The last great day, what should that tell us about that day? It's the very end of the plan of salvation when all things are restored. Now, it's very interesting that during the Feast of Tabernacles, what did they do? What did they do during the Feast of Tabernacles? Just name me a couple things. They dwelt in booths, but before they dwelt in booths, I want to know, what were the booths made out of? Palm branches, cedar boughs, leafy willows. Leafy willows. If I just took branches, dead branches off the ground and built a little hut, is that what they were required to do? No, they were required to cut leafy boughs, things that were living, green, things that were alive. Now, what did that represent? What did that represent? In the simplest form, what does it represent? Right, something to do with living, but that God would provide our dwelling places, right? They didn't use a sawmill, and they weren't supposed to cut up wood for a week or 2 weeks and do that. They were supposed to build their places, their little little booths. They were supposed to build them out of living things, living branches, living trees, so that when they rested underneath them, they would be looking up at life, right? So in the book of Revelation, we're going to see this. In the book of Revelation, he says, I'm going to make all things new, and the former things will not be remembered or come to mind. And I believe that's because of the glory that's going to be revealed. So if at the end of the millennium, after the destruction, we're going to look at this, we talked briefly about it, that God said he was going to destroy the wicked, those that hang on to their sin, and then he's going to make all things new. He's going to restore everything, and so he's going to have to recreate. Now, how many days did it take to create this earth in the beginning? 6 days, and the 7th was a Sabbath, right? The 7th was a Sabbath. So the very first day that he started creation of the creation week, what day would that have been? I already told you. The beginning, or the first day of the week, right? The first day of the week. So we got the first day of the week he starts creating. And he gets to the 7th day of the week. And what does he do on the 7th day? He rests, right? So naturally, within the festival cycle, in the 8th day cycle, you're going to end up with a Sabbath somewhere. You have to. So you've got a Sabbath at the beginning, because it says the first day is the Sabbath of the Feast of Tabernacles. And the 8th day is the Sabbath. But you're going to have a Sabbath. So you put that thing where it belongs, declaring the end from the beginning. At the beginning of creation, he starts on the first day of the week and has a 7-day cycle, rests on the 7th day. And what would the 8th day do then? It would be a brand new beginning. And when we look in Scripture, we see the 8th is a new beginning. That's when all things begin again. In the 8th millennium, after the 7th millennium, after the millennium of rest, we have the 8th millennium, which will be a new beginning. And that's when God will have completed the act of recreation. Completed the act of recreation, and the earth will be made all new. And the reason why the 8th day is the great day, it's because when everything in the plan of salvation, the promises, all the promises in the plan of salvation will have been completed on the 8th day, and that's when we will get the deed, if you will, to the new earth and the gates of the heavenly Jerusalem now on the earth will be opened and the whole earth will be given back to the saints. That's at that time the meek shall inherit the earth, which is the culmination of the whole plan of salvation. So the last great day is the culmination of the plan of salvation when everything is put back into its original state, the Garden of Eden, the earth made new, everything. And that's when God, the fulfillment of the Feast of Tabernacles, when God provides our living dwellings as declared in the act of going out into the forest and bringing and dwelling in booths for the Feast of Tabernacles, when God will provide our dwelling places. We no longer will have to shelter ourselves from the storms and so on. We will be able to sleep in the forest. There's a promise in Ezekiel. We will be able to sleep in the woods and we will be safe. That's part of the gospel. That's part of the gospel promise. And it just gets better. As we start understanding it more and more, it just gets better and better. So let's keep going, shall we? On the last great day, that great day of the feast. This is speaking of the Feast of Tabernacles again. This is what we're demonstrating in the book of Revelation now, that Yeshua actually declared what would happen in the Feast of Tabernacles. He said this when he was on earth during the Feast of Tabernacles. On the last great day, the great day of the feast, Jesus stood up, Yeshua stood up and cried out, saying, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink." It's very interesting what day he did this on. What day did he do this on? Somebody tell me. The last great day of the feast. He's fulfilling prophecy, and at the same time, he's declaring prophecy. You see, that's what the feasts are. Same thing could be said about the Passover. Revelation 21, verse 6. And he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give of the fountain of the water of life freely to him who thirsts." When does this happen? You read the book of Revelation, which we're going to look at a little bit here. This is during the Feast of Tabernacles that he's declaring this. In fact, I believe it's probably on the last great day. He's rehearsing some of these promises about the water of life, declaring himself again at the end of the book of Revelation as the fulfillment of the water of life. Now he's amongst us again, as he was 2,000 years ago. He will be amongst us, and he declares again on the last great day that he is the water of life, and it proceeds from his throne. Goes on to say another promise during the same festival. Then Yeshua spoke to them again, John chapter 8, verse 12, during the Feast of Tabernacles. Very likely, it looks like this is on the last great day again. He says, "Then Yeshua spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life." Now let me ask you, those people that were walking down in that day, when Yeshua walked out of the temple, the light of the world, when he walked out of the temple and he went to go to bed at night, did those people see darkness? At night. Did they see darkness? Yes. So this is a darkness on two counts. This is very, very amazing to me. A spiritual darkness. Yeshua is talking 2,000 years ago of a spiritual darkness. If we walk in him, we will not walk in darkness. So we walk in the light as he is in the light, but it still gets dark at night, doesn't it? But when the fulfillment of the Feast of Tabernacles comes at the end on the last great day, there won't be either spiritual darkness or literal darkness. And we can see that in the promise. The city had no need of the sun. What do we need the sun for? We need the sun today so that we can see where we're walking. When the sun goes behind the clouds, we notice it gets a little bit dark. But when the sun goes over the horizon, it gets really dark. It gets really dark, doesn't it? So, but in the kingdom, the city had no need of the sun nor of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God illuminated it. The Lamb is its light. So, at the fulfillment which Yeshua was pointing forward to, I don't know if they knew that back then, but looking back at what he said, we can see that he was actually pointing forward to the fulfillment of the Feast of Tabernacles. Back 2,000 years, he declared himself to be the light of the world, but in Revelation chapter 20, 21, and 22 is the fulfillment of the Feast of Tabernacles, and he declares himself in the book of Revelation as the light that lights the whole city from the throne of God. So he is declared again to be the light of the world. Goes on to say in Revelation 22, 3 and 5, there shall be no more curse. There shall be no night there. A lot of people don't realize that night, darkness, was caused by the curse. It was caused by the curse. And somebody says, well, what curse? We looked at the curse already, and we saw some curses. Let's have some review. What were some of the curses that we've looked at already from the very beginning? Cattle.
Women in childbirth.
Cattle were cursed. The serpent would be cursed above the cattle of the field and every beast. Yeah. And what else? Women were cursed with childbirth, with not childbirth. We talked a great deal about that. The pain and conception and so on. And what else? Slaving away. Adam was cursed that he would have to work hard. So these curses are going to be gone. There's not going to be any more of these curses. So women aren't going to have to be cursed with the pain during childbirth and conception and so on. Men are not going to have to sweat with the brow of their forehead to produce food for their families.
They won't be cursed with wanting to control their husbands.
They won't be cursed with wanting to control their husbands. Right. Okay, that's good. We talked about that. So these are some of the curses that were at the beginning. Now, what curse is going to remain? The serpent will always go on the ground. And that will be a reminder for us. It'll probably be more of a reminder for Adam and Eve than for us, because they remembered when they saw fiery flying serpents. We talked a little bit about that. It's very likely. You know, when you look at the anatomy, and it's very interesting. I did some homework on this. Serpents had wings. Well, if you look at a serpent, check out the anatomy of a serpent. And in their part of their body, there's two little prongs that sort of come out. Just do some homework on that. And there's evidence that a snake had more than what we see. Not sure what it is, but I believe that the Bible helps us with that. So that's some homework you can do. Very interesting. When I saw that, I thought, there is traces of this thing that God has left in his creation. So that's something that's going to be left on the serpent. He will always have to go on the ground. Doesn't look like he's going to be flying anymore. And what else? There was something else. The sky? Scars, right, scars on Yeshua. He bore the curse, it tells us in Galatians, he bore the curse of the law, the penalty of the law. He was cursed. He will bore, we looked at that promise, that he will forever bear the curse of the law, the piercings in his hand. It will be a reminder of what he had done for us so that we could enjoy eternity. Now, these promises that there's going to be no night there, I don't know about you, but when I walk outside at night, I take this headlamp that I could land an airplane on out here in the woods because I don't have confidence that there's nothing out there that can hurt me. In fact, I know there is. And so I'm a little bit, cautious walking around. I think it's just being wise. But there will be no night there. Not only will the animals not hurt you, it won't be dark. Is that good news? This is all gospel in my mind. This is all good news of the kingdom. The more of this good news I have, the more it makes me fall in love with this Creator. Does that do that to you? So, you husband and wives, the more you fall in love with your wife, and that happens over time, you fall more in love with your wife over time, does it make you want to make her more happy all the time? And you don't want to hurt her more all the time? Sure. And that's what the gospel does for us. It gives us an understanding of a God that wants the best for us all the time. And the more we know about him, about all this good news, that's why the gospel is actually the power of God, because it helps us to fall more in love with our Creator all the time, that we would never want to do anything that would hurt him. i.e. scars in his hands. We wouldn't want to do anything. What was it that caused the scars in his hands? Come on, everyone knows this. It's your sins and mine that caused the scars. So the more we fall in love with our Creator and Redeemer, the less and less we want to hurt him. And when we see the nail prints in his hands, it will forever put everything behind us. And we can actually see those by faith today. And we can still, by faith today, put those things that hurt him behind us. And that's what gives us this life force, this spirit that he puts in us that will cause us to be obedient to his statutes and judgments and do them. Ezekiel 36, 26 and 27. That's the promise that he will do this. But without the gospel, it can't happen. It cannot happen. We have to understand the gospel, because that gives us a living relationship with our Creator in knowing what he wants to do for us and through us. Genesis 8:22, while the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. When did this happen? This was another curse that came upon the earth at the time of the flood. Noah gets off the ark and God says, well, Noah, I got some news for you. Just like I had some news for Adam and Eve, things are going to change. Well, things are going to change drastically for you, Noah. You've been used to no darkness, and you've been used to being able to plant seeds at any time of the year and get a harvest, and it's been warm all the time. Wow, that was good. We can clean that up later. It's not going anywhere. That's good. So you would be able to have warmth all through the year. It would never get cold. There would not be day and night as we know it. Well, you're saying, well, there was day and night in creation. Yeah, there was day and night, but it was a lot different. It wasn't thick blackness. There's been some good study on what it would have been like before the flood, and the evidence suggests that at night it just would have got dim. The sun would have disappeared, but there still would have been light. And there's reasons for that, which we're not going to get into, but there's some really good homework that's been done. A fellow named Kent Hovind, another fella from Texas, I forget his name, Carl Baugh, I believe. They've got some good homework done on what the creation was before the flood, and it makes a lot of sense that before the flood, it wouldn't have got complete dark. So when Noah, when these changes happened at the time of the flood, now it was going to be dark. So God was saying, look, I'm sorry, but this is the way it's going to be until the recreation, where there will be no night there. Why? Because there was a change from the Garden of Eden to after the flood. There was another curse that came on. And then after the recreation, there will be no night. And that will be while the earth remaineth as it is until the recreation. They shall neither hunger anymore nor thirst anymore. The sun shall not strike them nor any heat. So here again gives us the idea that things are going to be restored to their Edenic state, and it's not going to be scorching hot anywhere in the earth. It's going to be a beautiful temperature every day. We're not going to be fighting 30 below temperatures and this sort of thing. All of this cold and heat will be gone forever. Is that good news? That is absolutely good news. And for you people that like, sweating and high humidity, well, you might be able to go somewhere where there is that. But for the average person who doesn't like cold and likes a perfect temperature all the time, I don't know about you, but I've gone to the tropics a couple times, and when the weather's good, it's good. Hurricanes are not very good, and cyclones and all that kind of stuff. But my belief is that the world will be such that every day will be a perfect day. That's going to be just wonderful. Perfect weather. You won't have to worry about those frosts on your garden. Those early frosts we talked about and those late frosts is going to be good temperature. Plant whatever you want any time of the year. 50 days later or whatever it takes for that seed, you will get a harvest.
If you've been blessed by the information shared here today, please consider adding this ministry to the ministries you support. Thank you.